Some big things are happening right now in the world of Ripple and XRP. And just a few days ago, Jerome Powell, chairman of the Fed, made a speech that moved markets. Well, this speech had many people in the XRP community take to X to share this little bit.
We're also, as you know, investing heavily right now in building a new settlement system for instant payments in the U.S. It'll be the first such major expansion of our core payment system since the 1970s. We found the case for this quite compelling for consumers, businesses, and just ensuring that all financial institutions have access to the payment system.
And this post specifically has been shared a lot. In most cases, they're saying he is clearly talking about XRP. Now, this has taken things even further to the point where now they're alluding to the fact that the Fed is going to take ownership of Ripple for its global payments system. As you can see here, someone even shared that at Google, if you type in Federal Reserve use of XRP globally, on Google it says, yes, the Federal Reserve plans to take ownership of Ripple XRP as a global payment solution. But is any of this actually true, and what does this mean for the future of XRP? Well, in this video, we'll dive into the information, and we'll even head on over to Google to see what pops up when we type that search phrase in. We'll also dissect what Jerome Powell actually shared in his most recent speech at Jackson Hole on August 23rd, and whether it holds any relevance whatsoever for Ripple and XRP. We'll dive into the latest bombshell news surrounding a new crypto ETF that's been making waves, what happened to it recently, and what that could mean for a potential future XRP ETF. And as always, before we begin the video, head on over to bullrunners.com and subscribe to learn how to take advantage of our all market solution. If it's a bear market, perfect. You can put your XRP to work to earn crypto, which reduces or removes volatility from your portfolio. On the flip side, if we enter a complete and total bull market, this is the best way to earn crypto and compound on that bag of yours so you have more by the end of the bull run. Again, just go to bullrunners.com to discover how to earn crypto in 10 minutes or less with the #1 play to earn XRP game. And as always, so if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the richest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Okay, so I think it's important that we dive into this right away because we want to debunk any rumors or anything that might potentially get your hopes up in a false pretense or manner. That said, you see a lot of these types of clickbait all over Twitter, and in particular from bigger accounts. Their incentive is to drive hype or to get engagement. They do get paid by Twitter for more engagement, so you know, but also, right, they potentially get large sponsors or partnerships. And ultimately, that's typically the goal of content creators. Why do all of this work and build up an audience if you can't make any money from it? Because it's very hard to do anything like this for free. It takes a lot of time and effort. However, these are arguably very low effort posts. And in the case of Jack the Rippler, he posted a year-old video of Jerome Powell saying he is clearly talking about XRP. Let's rewatch this video to see exactly what he says and whether or not he's actually talking about it.
We're also, as you know, investing heavily right now in building a new settlement system for instant payments in the U.S. It'll be the first such major expansion of our core payment system since the 1970s. We found the case for this quite compelling for consumers, businesses, and just ensuring that all financial institutions have access to the payment system.
So at no point in time did he actually mention XRP. Yes, XRP can do this, but in all fairness, a lot of other blockchains can too. And there are plenty of blockchains that have quick or fast settlements as well. That's what blockchain does, especially if they have a higher TPS. So that said, it's not like XRP is the end all be all. Now, it doesn't mean that XRP or Ripple can't be used at a central bank level, but I'll be fair with you. At this point in time, Fed now, the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, it doesn't seem from any information that we've had so far that that's the case. Now, there was another post recently, which we'll dive into, but before we do, you can can even see right down here in the comments, right? Someone saying bullish, bullish, bullish. But what's really interesting is he says, this guy, Richie B, says this: I'm a big XRP believer, but you are obviously doing this for clickbait because you're posting this 1-year-old video the same day as FOMC. So it seems like this was a part of his speech. And that is very misleading. He literally posted this the exact same day that Jerome Powell spoke at Jackson Hole. So it's really important that we pay attention to these little details. Sometimes it helps to go into the comments. And another thing that I want to make mention of is this post from Wrath of Kahneman. Okay, it's a very interesting post, and I would totally agree. And this is something that I believe everyone in the XRP community should do too, because the community is very strong, but there are a lot of bullshitters in this community that get, your hopes up over some false or misleading information. What makes for good XRP information? An online code of ethics. 1, always include source links, not just screen caps. 2, don't repost old news without noting, which is exactly what happened there. 3, cite others appropriately. 4, distinguish between speculation, opinion, and fact. And 5, strive for objectivity. And I would believe that to be the case. More often than not, you'll see a post saying bam or boom or kaboom, right? Where they're like, this just happened. And it's like a speech from 2018 where a lot has changed and the SEC had a lawsuit with Ripple and banks dropped off and they're no longer partnered with certain people. Life happens, business changes, right? And not everything looks like it's always bullish news. Sometimes things aren't great at companies, and that's exactly how you have to deal with problems in reality in order to not only solve the problem itself, but to find new solutions that could potentially help the company grow to a far bigger market. Now, here's another post that's not too old. According to Google, the Federal Reserve plans to acquire XRP as a global payment solution, and they cited that they actually searched this on Google, and the AI information, or probably a Wikipedia page information, brought this up. So we're going to go ahead and do it in this video right now. I already had it typed out: Federal Reserve use of XRP globally, and I'm going to click enter and just see what happens. And currently it says AI overview is not available for this search. When I previously did it a few days ago, it was, but I don't know how they're operating this information. In that case, it brought up a few different sources, but it did not directly state that they're going to be taking over Ripple or XRP and using it for global payment systems. So that could have very much referred to potentially a Wikipedia page, but you can go and Google this yourself just to double verify. But the first thing that pops up right here is the Federal Reserve Board Gov 1670 Federal Reserve actions to support interbank settlement of faster payments. And so again, someone on Twitter might take this and run with it and post it all over saying, look, the Federal Reserve wants this, and this is obviously referring to XRP because XRP is mentioned in this article. But it's important to note that this was done in November 7th of 2019 by a guy named Chris Metzner, okay? And in the comment itself, it says, I am not an expert in this matter. So it's like kind of like someone saying, I'm not a doctor, but I would recommend, right? But I've been following the cryptocurrency and blockchain industry for several years. I am excited to imagine a world of instant global payment settlement systems. I wonder, would it be better if Fed now joined RippleNet to access on-demand liquidity through XRP for transferring value between all of our nation's banks? Instant settlement 24/7 365. Again, these things are very much possible with blockchain technology, but just because they are does not mean they need to adopt Ripple's technology or XRP. Arguably, they could use Ripple technology and still not integrate XRP into any of those payment platforms to take advantage of that liquidity, right? As a fee mechanism, or just in general as a value creation mechanism. There's no reason that Ripple would need to integrate XRP into a Federal Reserve banking CBDC. And so sometimes it's important to not just look at it and get all hyped and then go buy more. It's probably more important to actually do a bit more digging and homework, or even watching videos like this. In this case, it says the Federal Reserve taking ownership of XRP would be highly unlikely. And this was also a question asked on Google: Fed ownership of XRP. It's literally stating highly unlikely. So, the reality is, even though you see that, that, it doesn't mean that it's highly unlikely, but sometimes you have to look or seek information that potentially disproves the point. And if you can't find anything that is legitimate or valid, it's highly unlikely it's true. So no, Jerome Powell did not talk about XRP the other day. They do not have to integrate XRP particularly, or even Ripple technology, into a Fed payments platform. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It's just probably unlikely. They wouldn't need to. And third, I just want to cover what actually happened over at the Fed yesterday. And here's an article from Barron's.com. The most consequential event this fall won't be the U.S. election, a war in the Middle East, or even baseball's World Series. For most Americans, it will be the first reduction in the U.S. interest rates in more than 4 years. An expected rate cut by the Federal Reserve in mid-September won't change the price of eggs or businesses' hiring plans overnight, but it will signal the start of the next phase of the monetary policy cycle, with important consequences for the economy, financial markets, and consumers. But if the Fed Chair Jerome Powell and his colleagues thread the needle just right, the central bank could execute a fabled soft landing that would keep the economy growing at just the right rate without the threat of recession or pronounced inflation. There is a decent chance this time that the Fed will succeed. In other words, the same old phrase, goes or plays along. This time might be different. But will this time actually be different, considering we're seeing a bunch of macro indicators that are signaling weakness across the board in the economy? We're seeing unemployment consistently rise and arguably going to continue to rise. And just as we're hitting new all-time highs in the S&P 500, now we're going to start to cut rates. Well, Craig Shapiro believes otherwise. He's saying Powell cutting rates within a whisker of the all-time SPX high, with credit spreads basically record tight, with inflation running above 2.5% and the core CPI at 3%, while employment is at a level that would be considered at maximum for most of the last 50 years of data, is a massive capitulation that will usher in tremendous hard asset boom, as he is sacrificing the long-term stability and hegemony of the US dollar to help save US government finances. It's hard to find an alternative explanation for the speed of pivot and throwing out most of the Fed reaction function orthodoxy. And in layman's terms, he's just basically stating he's trying to cut too soon. Instead of reacting to the economy, what he's doing is cutting to have that fabled soft landing. It is what it is. We knew this was coming eventually. I thought it would happen after more pain was seen in the economy and financial markets. First, to give more time before inflation returned. But Powell is trying to preempt the pain in an election year. And I think that is really a key point too, right? This is an election year where we're still trying to get inflation down to 2%. And it has been a struggle. It's been far more sticky when at first, right, if anyone remembers, the Fed kept saying this was transitory. It was going to be here today, gone tomorrow. That is obviously not the case. So they kept interest rates really high after a long period of time now because they're worried about a second wave of inflation. And so this gentleman is basically stating that he believes we are now going to get that because we're cutting rates too soon. We have not reached the goal, right? And everything is a little too tight in this situation with credit spreads and the SPX being at highs and inflation at highs. So what he's saying is, I predict a return to inflation before lower rates are able to save the deterioration in the labor market. I believe that to be true as well. The labor market is going to continue to become weaker. And so as they're lowering interest rates, inflation is likely going to rise and the markets will start to rally yet again. But when things are really weak, eventually they all come to a crash or an end, right? So what goes up must come down. In this case, here's a man who posted an article that actually has a date of September 18th, 2007. And here is the article. Markets soar after Fed cuts key rate by half a point. Think about that. Half a point. We're talking a quarter of a point. And I believe this is likely going to happen as well. But what's more important is to pay attention to this date, September 18th, 2007. Let's go look at it on the S&P 500. So here, right on this green arrow, you can see that that's actually the date that it occurred. So the article seems to be correct. That is a very crazy move with a lot of strength behind it. I mean, we're talking virtually no wick on the upside. That means there was no sell pressure up here. It just went straight up all day and closed at an all-time high. Then the market continued rallying for a bit, and I would argue probably almost 4%. Let's see, 3.7%, right, to a new high. So in general, this was a new all-time high right up here. As you can see, the S&P 500 had never reached a high like that before. Then shortly thereafter, we experienced the Great Recession, and the market dumped upwards of 56%. I believe. Yep, I know these markets pretty well now. 57%, which is actually insane. In other words, the first 50 basis point rate cut was shortly followed with a major recession. And if I go ahead and pull up the rate cut right here, you can see around the same time frame on both sides right here. Okay, rate cut, bam, on that day, 50 basis points, bam. You can see where the line is on both, even though it's not perfectly aligned. It's hard because there's a monthly time frame and a daily. Okay, and they continued cutting rates as they saw the economy get weaker and weaker and weaker. And by the time they lowered to near zero, it was too late. The market had already crashed, but this is ultimately what stimulated new borrowing and a new growth in the economy. So that said, you typically want to sell the first rate cut, which leads me to believe, right, that markets are going to continue to rally, number one, into that first rate cut, and even potentially after, maybe even through the end of the year. And two, it's likely going to happen anyways into a presidential election year. When you study presidential election years over the last 100 years, generally speaking, almost every single time, except for like one or two anomalies, the market rallies into the end of the year. So yes, I do believe we still have some legs left in the market, but shortly after that first rate cut, you might want to start looking at getting out of the market. Now, before we continue the video, just really quickly, head on over to bullrunners.com, subscribe to discover how to earn more crypto in less than 10 minutes with the #1 play to earn XRP game. This is a phenomenal way to put your XRP to work. We're going to continue to share this with you because we believe it's really there to help you, and you'll see just how awesome this opportunity is. You can earn up to 1,000 to 2,000 XRP per day. Yes, the crypto itself is convertible for XRP, and we show you how that works in this short 8-minute video once you subscribe. And you're going to do that in 3 very simple steps. Okay, the first step is you just get an XRP wallet. The second step is you are going to get your rare game pieces. Okay, and then finally you play the game to earn the crypto. Yes, it takes literally 10 minutes a day. It is so simple, and it's a great way to reduce the volatility in your portfolio, also compounding onto that XRP bag, so you can take full advantage of the end of the year and in the bull market. We're so excited to share this with you, so go to bullrunners.com. You can find the link in the description below. Let's get back into the video. So now we are going to dive into the ETF news. In this article, it says the SEC is in talks with the ETF issuers over concerns of Solana being a security, preceded SIBA removing 19B4s, and this is according to some sources. Now, we already have a strong case for crypto ETFs now that we have the Bitcoin spot ETF and the Ethereum spot ETF. However, the SEC is now concerned that Solana itself is a security, which is kind of silly at this point, considering it seems to be, sufficiently decentralized. No one's out there making promises that you are going to become rich by investing in it. Everyone wants to get rich by investing into it, but the Solana Foundation itself isn't really doing that. That said, over the weekend, the 19B4 filings, which were filed by exchanges on behalf of issuers, no longer show up on the SIBA website. They're also not currently on the Federal Registrar. 2 issuers are currently vying for a Solana ETF, 21 shares and Vanguard. ETH. However, the SEC reached out with this stance wasn't a surprise to the issuers, given that the agency had previously called Solana a security in multiple court filings. However, we're starting to find out that no matter what the SEC attacks, they're consistently pushed back onto their heels, as they made the mistake of starting lawsuits retroactively to begin with without providing real clear regulatory clarity and a framework. And here is one of those cases. A judge shot down Kraken's request to dismiss claims made by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, alleging that the exchange, Kraken, violated securities laws. The SEC argues that Kraken hawked more than 11 different crypto asset securities on its platform and was required by law to register with the regulator. Now, Judge Orrick noted that the SEC just needed one plausible crypto. However, the SEC used two, and that was Solana and Algorand. So because they named Solana and Algorand particularly, in this case now Solana is struggling to have an ETF. And that actually could muddy the waters for other cryptos to have an ETF, considering a lot of other cryptos are easier to attack, there's less money in them, there's less institutional desire among them. You could argue, well, that's not true with XRP, but I would argue it very much is after this current lawsuit, right? We still are waiting an appeal by October 6th, number one, and two, it is a far smaller market cap. So that tells me everything I need to know. It's sitting at about a $30 billion market cap, and that's just my average right now that it's been kind of chilling at, maybe sometimes higher, in a down market lower, generally speaking, $30 to $35 billion. When you look at Ethereum and Bitcoin, we're talking $1 trillion plus between the two of them. There's far more institutional interest in those currently. And so I think Nate Garassi makes a really good point in these posts that Solana ETF is not happening anytime soon under the current administration. And given that the CME traded Solana futures don't currently exist, it seems the only viable path for spot Solana ETF approval would be the implementation of a legitimate crypto regulatory framework, which so many major crypto players and companies have made their way to Washington to make it known that they are extremely pissed off with Gary Gensler and this administration, yet nothing has been done. And if that's the case with Biden and Harris, why would it change under a Harris administration? If anything, they're just pandering to get votes, but the reality is they've proved that they are not friends to crypto. Otherwise, they would have already done something within 4 years. And that clearly defines which crypto assets are securities versus commodities, or for the SEC to agree with Solana being designated as a non-security commodity. In either case, the agency would also need comfortability around surveillance sharing agreements with currently unregulated spot crypto exchanges. All of that appears highly unlikely to happen under the current administration, which makes the Van Eck and 21 share filings likely bets on a more crypto-friendly government. And then Scott Johnson said, my guess on what is happening is that Gary says the Sol ETF is dead on arrival under his watch, which is not surprising. So how does this relate to the XRP ETF? Well, the reality is we still don't have total clarity, other than the fact that we know that XRP itself is not a security. However, just because it's not a security doesn't mean that it would pass the sniff test for someone like Gary Gensler to approve a spot ETF for it, which means it's highly likely that we are going to get an XRP spot ETF when you consider that Solana is sitting at a $73 billion market cap, and it's obviously being looked at and eventually will get a spot ETF under a new administration. But also, when you look at XRP, it's highly likely that XRP itself will also get an ETF at some point in time, but we would need a new administration and clear regulatory frameworks. And so now we're going to hop on over to the chart to do a brief bit of technical analysis. So the first thing I want to make a note of is the fact that we can use a bunch of indicators, but I've learned that honestly price action is the best indicator. Horizontal supports, resistances, volume, sometimes a cool indicator. And in this case, I am using something called a Dawn chain trend ribbon. And as you can see here, whenever we flip bullish, okay, on this green, and I'm on a 3-day time frame, things remained relatively bullish, okay, through this entire range. Whenever we flip bearish, it was a slightly late or a lagging indicator, but things continued trending down. And then over a period of time, when it flipped bullish again, things look bullish. So it is very much possible that we start to pump into new all-time high territory, or at least local high territory. Again, the major range for us to break out to and above would be 75 cents. But in order to get there, we would need the price first to break out above 63 cents on any serious 3-day time frame. Okay, from a weekly time frame, it's no different. You can see we've seen a lot of resistance there with 1 wick, 2 wicks, 3, 4, 5 straight weeks and 1 week in between where it didn't even touch it, where we've seen sell pressure. So we would like to potentially close above there, even if it was on a daily time frame. We failed to do it. Okay, so I like looking at that 3-day Dawn chain trend ribbon. Sometimes I like looking at the volume to confirm is the move legit. So if we break above here on some serious volume, good to go up to the 75-cent range. Above the 75-cent range, we have a lot of room for growth up to about $1.75 to $2, and then it remains to be seen what would happen there. So I'd like to ideally see XRP hold this trend line from these local lows, the first major low here, the second major low right here on August 4th. Okay, so even if we do break down, for us to hold this ascending wedge or triangle range into a potential breakout to volume, confirming that breakout, and then a move above the 75-cent range. Now, this would have been our 1, 2, 3, fourth time touching it. So the longer the range, the stronger the breakout. So I'm pretty confident, right, that we're going to see more bullishness through the end of the year. And in that scenario, anything that is a dip into these ranges would be a buy zone for me. So one last time, if you haven't already and you enjoyed the video, head to bullrunners.com to discover how to earn more crypto in less than 10 minutes with the #1 play to earn XRP game. And also, if you do, like the video, then go ahead and subscribe, leave us a like. It really helps the channel out. And thanks so much for watching the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video, my friend. Goodbye.